Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and people. It's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. I'm joined by a special guest because everyone's a special guest for taking their time to join me on my show. I'm joined by Miss Allison Hamscher. Now, we sometimes, like I said, on my podcast, I meet people for the first time via this podcast, and it's just a crazy world of digital and how you connect with people. But I heard Allison on another podcast, which was the Get Career Clarity podcast, and her ideas on personal branding, getting yourself out there on LinkedIn, on your resume, all those things. She was dropping mad gems that I was like, I need to have you on my podcast to elevate your story and elevate your tips to my audience as well. So before we get into this episode, Allison, can you give the listeners a brief intro of who you are?
Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure being on your podcast and appreciate the opportunity. So my name is Allison Hamscher. I am the founder of Elevated Resumes. I founded the business in 2014, and we really probably have grown year over year, and our services have really adapted really to our clients' needs. So as you can imagine, at Elevated Resumes, we offer resume support. But nowadays, it's so much more than just your resume. We really focus on our clients' personal brand. So we're not only working on the resume, we're working on, it can obviously include cover letters, bios, your LinkedIn presence, and really so much more these days. So that's a very high level kind of snapshot of what we're up to.
I love it. I love it. And so let's do the career journey in 5 minutes take. How'd you get into this space of being your own business owner and launching your business in 2014?
Absolutely. So I'll give my parents a little bit of credit. My dad was always an entrepreneur in the construction space. So I always say my summers were spent doing drywall and putting down tile. So I'm pretty handy there. But not that has much to do with what I'm up to now. And then my mom was always a realtor. So I never was kind of pushed away from that idea of running my own business. So pretty quickly, I started Elevated years out of school. So I went to UPenn in Philadelphia, studied visual studies. So my major actually pretty directly relates to what I'm up to now. But the resume world, I always joke with my clients that I started a resume business, but I personally do not write resumes. So my expertise is actually on the visual side of things. So the actual format and the kind of aesthetic side of what a resume looks like. So I started my business by only offering that support. So clients would come with their content finalized, and then I would design it to help them stand out and make them memorable. And as we grew, more and more clients wanted full support. So they wanted help writing the resume as well as having it designed. So that's when I started in 2015, partnering with certified resume writers to help with content and strategy, which back then I didn't even know there was such a thing as a certified resume writer, but it is a thing. I like to refer to them as my unicorns because it blows my mind that they're pretty naturally gifted in resume writing and cover letter crafting.
I love it. I love it. And so I love the visual arts part. But, I don't want to be like a full resume tip. I think that there's so many resume tip things out there, but I want to dive in deeper into this personal brand mindset and personal brand idea. Where did that, what if someone was like, what is a personal brand? A student, a young professional, what would you say, like an elevator pitch of what that is?
Sure. So I feel like even with our clients that are more senior level, they're kind of intimidated by this concept of a personal brand. And you can start small. It doesn't mean that you need a logo or anything like that. It's more, how can you make yourself memorable? That's what I always tell our clients. So if you think about companies and their brand, it's rare that companies they want to be unique. So imagine if you told a bunch of companies your logos all have to be black and white and they all actually have to be the exact same logo. You can change the name, and they would never do that, right? They hire agencies and PR and all these tools to help them stand out. So it's funny that for so long, individuals were told your resume, which is selling yourself, is supposed to look like everyone else's. It's supposed to be black and white. Like, don't you dare do anything different to make yourself stand out. But isn't that the point? You're trying to stand out and showcase yourself a bit. So I'm a big believer in representing your personal brand. So obviously you want your resume to target your industry, but we have enough case studies now to show that more and more organizations, more and more industries at all the way up to the C-suite level are open to this idea of a designed resume. If you do Google, you talk about resume tips, you Google resume tips, you'll probably see a lot of articles out there that say, don't put visuals on your resume. Don't do this. Don't do that. And we kind of go against that a bit. We do incorporate visuals because there's so much science and research behind visuals improving memory. People's memory, they just get distracted a lot. They go through resumes so fast. So if you can give them something to catch on to retain that attention, they're more likely to remember your name. So that's really our goal. And I can talk more if there's people out there that are going to like argue that visuals can mess up ATS systems and all that. I have a little bit of an argument there that I can go into, but I'll save that for a question down the road.
Well, okay. So I still like the personal brand and being memorable part. Let's say we're going back into the lab. And I discussed this as I thought about my personal brand, like kind of like a workshop. What would you tell someone that's like, yo, I'm about to figure out what is my personal brand? What makes me unique before I start to project that outward? How would you tell someone to go through that assessment on their own to develop their personal brand?
Sure. So I think an easy way to think of it with content is pick 3 things. So 3 things that you want to stick with, and then when you leave an interview, you want someone to know those are the 3 things that remain in their mind. Again, I get kind of nerdy with this, but there's a lot of research that shows when you give someone a lot of information, they might retain 3 things, 3 core things. So repeat this, like weave this into your story. So 3 things could be for a sales professional. It could be that you have drive. It could be that you love generating income. You love running numbers. And it could be that you love relationship building. So they're not like mind-blowing things, but what are your innate skills? So don't pick something that you hate doing. I'm not a big numbers person. You can talk to my business partner. Like I love building relationships and having those calls and that kind of stuff. But if she gives me an Excel sheet, I'm like, oh man, like, do I have to? So pick something that you get so excited about because that will naturally come out in an interview. If you kind of fake it and try to convince yourself that you fit into this mold or this job description that you're not going to enjoy this job, you're probably not going to do a good job at it. So to reel it back in, I would say pick 3 topics that or 3 really strengths that align with you. So that's on the content side, but then on the design side of things, when it comes to your personal brand, it can be as simple as like a color selection or a font. So there's more traditional fonts, there's more modern fonts. So if you really want to break it down, something simple, if you're someone that in your home decor, it's like super modern, minimalistic, then pick a more modern font. And then if you're also someone that you like a pop of color, it's okay now to like incorporate some color into your resume. Obviously do it in a professional way, but even if your favorite color happens to be orange or you went to like Texas University and you like really want to incorporate that, find a way to do it in a professional way.
So I love it. So the law of 3, I love that because I do that, for Toastmasters, right? You always say, I'm going to tell you 3 things, that tell you the 3 things, and I wrap up. So you try to keep it simplified. We love lists, BuzzFeed, all that. So like, okay, I'm coming to you and I'm like, all right, my name is Philip. My 3 things about me is positivity, outgoing and meeting new people, and I guess supporting Black students or something. I don't know. Those are my 3. How would I build a narrative around that 3, as you said, on my resume or on my LinkedIn, as we do this personal brand consulting, how would I take your law of three and really build a brand around that three?
Sure. So at the end of this, I'll include, we recently actually wrote a blog post on it that just shares more details. So my expertise is more on the design side, and this is really where our content writers have that expertise. But really, what it comes down to is, okay, you have these three things. How can you weave that into each section of your resume and your document? So let's say you have a summary section. Those should be pretty short. So maybe they're 3 sentences. So does each one of those sentences tie back to your 3 core themes? Because if they don't, does that deserve that real estate at the top? When it comes down to your experiences, so you're writing about your most recent role and you have your bullets. Do you have examples of how you utilize those skills and you achieve results because you have those skills? Are those captured in the bullets? And then it goes down to your core expertise. Are you listing them as your core expertise? Like, if you're not, that's an easy one. Like literally just list them right there. Make it so simple that they're not being missed. These are my top 3 skills. And you can still list more than 3, but these are the top ones, and I'm putting them at the top of the list so no one misses it. So that's something with resumes. Same deal with LinkedIn. So you go over to your LinkedIn profile. It should be positioned a bit different than your resume. So LinkedIn, it's supposed to be more conversational because that's what LinkedIn as a platform wants it to be. So your about section on LinkedIn, again, are you reiterating that these are your skills and tying that in? Because you're not going to necessarily sound like a broken record. You're being consistent. So it's different of being like a broken record versus consistent. So I would say in your about section of LinkedIn, it better touch on those 3 things in a creative way.
I love it. I'm writing it out. I'm doing my, I guess, brand refresh on myself, and thinking about my core words, my core values, and I love the example. So I'll probably even incorporate that in my LinkedIn or my resume.
And one easy way to test that is that common resume question of, if you had to pick, I know that's like frustrating, but if you had to quiz yourself and someone asked you that in an interview, what are 3 words to describe yourself? What are you going to say? Because sometimes our clients say that. They're like, I can't narrow it down to 3. I'm like, all right, well, if you were in an interview and they asked you that, what are you going to say? Because you're not going to say you can't answer it, right? So challenge yourself a bit, or ask around, ask your peers, ask your mentors, because maybe you don't see yourself as a leader, but maybe one of your peers would say that you are a leader because you're maybe not realizing that all this volunteer work or this community involvement, just because you might not be a manager or have a senior level role at your organization, doesn't mean you don't innately have this leadership quality inside you.
I think I'm gonna do an experiment. I'm gonna do a focus group, and I'm going to ask my network. You'll see it later on LinkedIn. I'm going to ask my network to fill out like a Google form with 3 words that they think describe me. See what comes up in that Wordle, and see if I align with that brand. I think that's a great. I love that. Solicit that fishbowl mindset. Like, it's hard to see yourself. Sometimes you solicit that. So how often, you're thinking about your resume and reviewing it, even if you're let's say you're a non-active job seeker, like you're not looking for a job. How often should you revisit your personal brand or revisit your resume to just, refine it, or think about how you're showing up in the world or what you're putting on paper? How often would you think someone should kind of like think about that,
Sure. So on LinkedIn, that's a great way to kind of constantly be kind of touching on your brand. So building your brand through building kind of your communication. So engaging on LinkedIn, again, it kind of shows that you're involved in the space. So, I mean, but that's harder said than done. We have clients that contact us that say, I am so busy, I want to pay you to run my LinkedIn profile.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
We don't do that, but not of, because a lot of clients, they understand the importance of posting on LinkedIn and engaging and everything. But again, to be honest, it's just one more thing to do. So how can you do it in a natural way that gets you excited? So like talking about, again, it's talk about things that you actually are passionate about and you want to share about, and because then it doesn't feel so forced. So it doesn't always mean that you're writing your own content. It could be that you're sharing content. So stuff that you come across share it with others, because not everyone has the time to listen to different podcasts and everything. So if you come across something great, post it on your LinkedIn, because that, again, that is helping your brand without doing much work, because it's showing that you're just kind of taking the time to do it. So that says something. But in general, I would say if you have a new role, you've been in a new position, like a great way to kind of keep track of that, so that when you do have to go update your resume, is start a Google Excel sheet or Google Sheet, and just keep note of kind of proud moments that you had. So little accomplishments, little wins, little partnerships that you've started, things that are just for you. So that way, in 6 months, when you go to add that new role to your resume, you can go back and reference that and be like, oh, I completely forgot that I also did this. And then it's a little bit easier to update your resume. I think where it gets tricky is when you get promoted internally, there's not too much incentive to update your resume. So you can find yourself 3 roles down and you haven't updated your resume. And then externally, someone says, hey, I really like your experience. Send me your resume. And then you're like, I need to add 3 roles to my resume. So it's one of those things. Like, it's always better to be prepared than not be prepared. But I'm being realistic here. I would say you want to make sure your documents have been touched every 6 months. But I would say if you really want to build your brand, utilize LinkedIn. Or, I mean, I'm a visual person. I love pictures. I love Instagram, because for me, that's like my creative space. So outside of like my work, my Instagram, I feel like for my friends, they would say that's more of my brand. So I'm not saying it has to be LinkedIn as the platform, but kind of pick a platform to utilize.
I love it. And I was about to say, I have a running Google document where I list my work accomplishments and ready to go. So I vibed on that because I forget what I did like 6 months ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you can always reference job descriptions to kind of spark ideas, but as we all know, a lot of times a job description doesn't do you justice of kind of all the hats that you wear.
I love it. So what are some challenges, like I see, like, what has been some apprehension when you bring up the word personal brand and they say, nah, I'm not a flashy person. I don't want attention. Or what is some opposition to when you say you need to work on a personal brand? What has been some opposition that you've heard in that regard?
Sure. So I think a lot of our clients are pretty receptive to our approach. One of the reasons being is majority of our clients that come to us are referred in. So even if they had some hesitation about a designed resume, they found out from their colleague or sometimes their spouse of the impact that our designs have done. And they're like, okay, I need to be okay with change. The fact that this approach, there's so many examples and case studies to kind of prove it works, and I need to adapt to that. That shows that you can adapt. For some of our more senior level clients, they're like, I want to be perceived as someone that is not stuck in the times and stuck with the old Microsoft Word template. I want to show that I am above or ahead of the curve, even when it comes to my resume design. But that said, some clients do come to us and they're like, you're asking me about my personal brand. I am someone it's black and white, and that's okay. I'm not saying that your personal brand can't be pretty simple, but when it comes to format, there's still a way to improve flow and readability of content and still have it black and white. It can still even be Times New Roman, but there's still ways that you can visually make it easier for the eye to navigate the page through an improved format.
Awesome. So what now dialing back, what would be, some, like, not say success stories, but yeah, maybe one of those success stories that you shared where you took someone through these steps and it led to a successful outcome.
Sure.
Maybe so like the real creation of it and thinking about who that person and their colors and all that stuff. Take us through that kind of process.
Absolutely. So one of my favorite stories is we were working with a client. She was applying for a medical device opportunity with Stryker. So Stryker, a massive company, a really great company because it's a great way to kind of get your foot in. You have to work really hard, but you get paid really well, if I'm going to put it bluntly. So it is a pretty male dominant occupation. And so it was a female client that we were working with, and we were wrapping up her content and talking about her design. And she literally wanted to put flowers on her resume, like a subtle flower design. And I was like, I am all about representing your brand and doing something that you're excited about and that you're proud of. But I'm like, this is a unique situation where I don't want to put you in a tough situation. You're going to be interviewing with a lot of males. And I don't want it to not work in your favor. So what we did is we saved 2 different versions for her. We did one that had like kind of subtle design that she was so excited and so proud of. And then we did one that was like more navy blue, kind of safe option. So she went through the interview process. 3 months later, she reaches back out to us and she says, I got the job with Stryker. And she was like, and I used the flower resume. And I was like, I was pretty shocked because it could have gone either way depending on kind of who she's interviewing with. But I was really proud of her to use the example that she was most confident in. And also what I tell clients is if you are someone that you want to add a pop of color and some energy and you want to come to your interview with that type of energy and they don't accept that energy, then maybe you don't want to work for them. So that's, I think, where she kind of stood is if this is who I am and this is what I can bring to the table. And if this isn't what you want, then okay, I'll go work for your competitor type deal. So I guess that was like a cool story of kind of sticking to your guns of like, this is who I am, kind of take it or leave it type situation.
I love it. I love it. And maybe can we talk about brand congruence? And what I mean by that, you work with a lot of people on their visuals, but like, have you ever? I don't know. I just want to hear your personal thoughts. Like, have you ever met someone online that looked like online they were like the most outgoing person, and then you met them in person and they can't talk? And so I don't know. Just any thoughts on brand congruence? Like, you work with so many people on their visuals, but
then they get to an interview.
Yeah, or just more so like you work with them and they want to, let's say this, they want to put out this brand, right? They do a personal brand, but you met with them and you're like, I don't know if that really aligns or matches you. Here's some feedback that you have to make sure that their visual brand aligns with what they rock, how they kind of navigate themselves. They're like, oh, I want bright pink. And you're like, the way you talk, I don't think, not the way you talk, but, like, I don't know if you're a bright pink person, like that story, like, oh, you want flowers, but I don't know. I don't see you as, flowery. Here's some suggestions, like that kind of thing.
I mean, to be honest, when a client is kind of, they're committed to it, I'll guide them in the right direction of, I say like, okay, I see what you're saying. I will incorporate like an element of this, like kind of like an accent color type situation, and I'll guide them in the right direction because again, we've done a few thousand resumes around the world across industries. We know kind of what's working. There are industries like lawyers and accountants where some clients do come to us and they do want something more creative. And then we do say like, hey, we still have to play the game a little bit. So how can we kind of find a happy medium? And that's where I talk to them. But kind of to your point, sometimes we work with clients and they want to use these really big, extravagant words. Like you have to use a thesaurus to like, instead of amazing or like dedicated, they want to throw out this ginormous word. And we're like, that people see through that. Like just be real, because if you're saying you're this person and it's like that person doesn't exist, then that doesn't show the best situation either. So sometimes we have to like tone people back. And then sometimes we have to build them up, because sometimes clients say like, oh, I'm not qualified for this role. And that's a lot of times, a lot of women that we work with, they don't think they're qualified for the role. And we really have to show them like, absolutely you are. And here's why. And so sometimes it's the opposite, that we really need to kind of shed some light on like, you've done some amazing things and put that down on paper. Don't be bashful about it. Show it off because you deserve this.
I love it. That actually spoke to my point too about like the underselling or overselling of people and that miscongruence. Can you speak to that? Do you see a lot of miscongruence in marginalized groups like women or minorities? In that regard, and you see that as a systemic diversity, equity, inclusion, topic, because I could definitely see, that space of, a marginalized group or identity underselling themselves because they don't feel very confident because they're going to be the few in spaces, the few women in that women in that space, or the few African Americans or Blacks in that space. So do you ever see like in your work in general, have you seen those themes of that play out, the underselling or overselling per group of people that you work with?
We do see it a lot. And I think one of the biggest hurdles is coming to us and investing in us, knowing that you're making an investment in yourself. Because what we've found is those same people, they have it inside them and they just need the tools to be really confident and proud. And one thing that we deliver is actual tools. So we get your resume done, we get your cover letter done, we get your LinkedIn done. And by the end of it, what a lot of our clients say is they're like, I am so proud of this. And then it makes it so much easier to knock on those doors, to send those LinkedIn messages, to say like, can I have this conversation? I know I'm qualified for this opportunity. Here's my resume. So I feel like that's one of our proudest moments, is that we can help someone, kind of give them a voice, and our clients do the hard work. You put in like 15 years of experience and you work with us for 1 month and we just help you put it on paper. And then they're like, I can't believe you did this for me. And we're like, but you did this. We just helped you put it on paper. So I think that's what we've found, is a lot of people that have that self-doubt, they have it inside them. They just need, it's hard to write a resume. So they just need that guidance to polish that tool, and then they kind of do that legwork of putting it in front of their network.
So how do you sell the return of investment and investing in you? I know you got the answer. Like, if they spend all this money, do they get a job that's more lucrative, or they spent this money on their LinkedIn and they get a gig for a speaking engagement? Like, do you have any stories like that where someone's like, oh, it might be a little too expensive for me right now, but because of their support, because of your support, they got their return on investment in regards to an opportunity?
I think it all ties back to, again, our clients talk about, so again, because we're a referral-based business, people talk about the ROI being obvious. So they heard it from their friends. Their friends got this really great role. And because of that, they're like, okay, I see how that kind of paid off for them. So there's no doubt that our ROI is there, and it's not always a lucrative thing. Like, majority of times it is a lucrative thing that you're getting a higher paid role, but maybe you're getting an opportunity that you've dreamed of forever, and it's a better work-life balance. For some of our clients that we're working with, they come to us and they're like, I rarely get to see my kids, and I'm in this space and they're not flexible. How can I find a company that has better company culture? So that sometimes is, how can we help you stand out to these more progressive organizations? That's something that we kind of help clients do. So getting a better job, getting an opportunity that kind of just better fits what you're looking for.
I love it. All right. So I lied. I said that the only organized place was the Shot for Shot. I mean, shout outs and plugs, but now we're going to go to a segment called Shot for Shot, where you get to ask me any random question. I ask you any random question. Do you want to go first, or I'll go first?
Oh, you go first. I got to think about it.
So you went into you studied visual arts and visual, and now you're in the resume world. If you were to go back in a time machine and speak to yourself as you studied this, what would be one thing that you would pour into yourself to, like, you seen Back to the Future where you gave him that betting book and that guy became rich? If you can go back in a time machine and give yourself a tool that you know now to maybe advance where you are now, what would you say to yourself?
It's like one of those things that like take your own medicine type deal. I tell people all the time, be confident, you're deserving, you've got this, you have a great idea. I think when I started this business, I kind of had this idea. And one of the first people I love Penn and I love the organization, but one of the first people I went back to before we kind of had all the case studies was I went to the Career Service Center and I showed them my idea. And they're like, this isn't how resumes should look. And I'm like, no, like, I think this is going to work. And I mean, granted, this was 6-7 years ago. And so things have changed and they've changed fast. So it's almost like if I could go back, I almost would just want to give myself encouragement that like, this is going to work and this is going to change the game of resumes, and you're going to work with some like badass people. We've done literally a NASA astronaut. We've worked with FBI agents. We've worked with professional backup dancers of Justin Timberlake. Like, we touch clients that are so impressive that I like, it would be hard to get like a meeting with these people, but they're trusting us to work on their personal brand. I would just kind of pat myself on the back and be like, I don't know, just say, you have a really good idea, run with it.
I love it. Okay, what's your question for me?
Oh, question for you. Sorry, I should have thought about this a little bit more before.
Nah, I love it. That's the point of shot for shot. It's supposed to be so random, just off the cuff.
So what? All right, I'm gonna put you on the spot. What are your 3 words?
Well, I thought about, yes, I was prepared for my 3 words before I came on this interview, because I knew like I had to really organically, and I'm gonna do the survey, so I'm gonna see if the world aligns with how I think about myself. Which
so you don't want to put it out there yet.
No, I'm gonna put it out there. I'm gonna put out my 3 words, and also I'm gonna say this too. Like, I believe that sometimes there is a miscongruence on how you view yourself and how the world views you. At the end of the day, too, you know, I still believe that I should view myself in the way I want to view myself. Like, if the whole world said I'm dumb and I'm like, I don't believe I'm dumb, then I should believe myself, right? So that's my caveat. But as I've gone out in the world, I really want to like think about like how I describe myself, and my actions carry that. So 1 is positive, and not a toxic positive, you know, like not saying like, oh, get over it, but more so like resiliency, optimism, hope, that kind of positive. So I you know, I believe in the good in people. So I believe I'm positive. 2, I'm outgoing. I like to meet new people. I'm not shy. So I would say that's 2. And then 3, I'd like to believe that I'm kind and nice, just generally like civil or respectful, or treat people like they want to be treated. So those would be my 3 words I'd like to use for myself. And like I said, I'm gonna put it out there. I want to see if those words are congruent with others. Like, would they think of me as positive, kind, and what was the other one? Positive, kind, and outgoing.
Outgoing, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And then like, I guess I can also think like how that shows up at work, right? Like, I do a lot of outreach. I'm not shy to talk to new people for outreach. Kind, I like to like celebrate my coworkers and elevate them and just hopefully be nice. And then positive, I'm like, this ain't so bad. like I am that dog, that little meme where the house is on fire. And he's like, this is fine. No, that's me. That's me in real life. I'm like, man, this is a bad situation, but it's okay.
Like, that's good. I mean, we need that these days. I feel like so many times it's easy to kind of focus on the bad. I love at the end of the year, you know, when like I don't know what network it is, but they pull together like the most impressive things that actually did happen that year. Because so often we talk about all the bad things that happened that year, and they talk about like all these huge wins that like the human society accomplished just this year, like mind-blowing type stuff. And I'm like, I need to read that article every year just to be like, we're doing okay. Remain positive.
Well, when you get that article, I want to read that too, because you know, I used to listen to the other one on, it was like the rap junk where they would just talk about the drama every year, like the recap. He would rap it, and I was like, this is bad. So this has been a great episode. You know, I definitely want to honor your time for taking time to be on my show. I definitely took some tips. I actually going to encourage those that are listening to this episode, write out your 3 words and practice it. And if you need some resume help, please go to Elevated Resumes. But this is the part of the show where I want to give you, you know, the platform shout outs and plugs. So share love, show love to anyone you want to show love to, and then plugs any way that you want to connect with the listeners of this podcast, as well as the things that you're working on that you want them to know about.
Sure, absolutely. So, I mean, one thing that comes to my mind is the reason that we were connected was thanks to Jillian. So she recently launched her podcast, Flourish Careers. So check her out. She is just a great person and just really pours her energy into providing tips and tricks for others. So follow along for some good career advice there. When it comes to elevated resumes, I mean, we're constantly kind of growing and expanding and adjusting to our clients' needs. And one thing that we're really proud and excited is that in 2023, we're going to be launching a leadership course. So again, we're just seeing a trend with all of our clients of they're at a certain level, they know they can get to the next level, but they're kind of lacking the confidence and the skills to do so. So how can we help those clients make that jump? And then also just this idea of leaders look a little bit different these days. So how can you show empathy and encourage engagement and all these different avenues that the next generation of leaders is going to need? So we're really excited. Keep an eye out for that, launching probably closer to the summer of next year. But service-wise, we're always kind of adjusting our services depending on kind of the times and what's changing. But we offer resume support, cover letter, bio, LinkedIn, interview prep. We even help clients like negotiate contracts. So really, if you just find yourself needing kind of a cheerleader in your corner, someone helping you kind of get out of a rut, we're happy to help.
I love it. Thank you so much. Well, Allison, this has been great. I definitely took some tips. Definitely, when I get some bread, I'll definitely utilize your service and my brand. And we'll stay engaged. We'll stay connected. And I'm curious to see what the world says about me, the 3 words to describe me. I'm gonna put that out on social and see what happens.
I love
and
it.
see what results.
It's brave of you. It's brave.
Hey, I mean, it's half brave and half, attention seeking. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, you're gonna send it to family too, because it's like, how does your family perceive you? How does the
I'm curious. I kind of am curious. I'm gonna say, like, I'm gonna do 2 questions, like, what relationship do you have to me?
Yeah.
And so have that, and then like colleague or whatever. I'm just figuring out, and then 3 words, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna see the wordle that shows up.
I like it. Let me know. I'm gonna follow along.
Yeah, I'll put it on LinkedIn. All right. Well, thank you so much. Positive Filter listeners, it's been a great episode. Please support Elevated Resumes, engage. I'll have all that in the show notes. Please support Allison. If you like this episode, please share it with a family member or friend. Sharing this helps elevate the podcast. Also, if you listen to this on Spotify or iTunes, leave a rating or review. That also additionally helps support this podcast. And then if you want to leave a voicemail for the podcast, it's 571-336-6560. That's 571-336-6560. Sometimes I take the voicemails and put them on the podcast. So thank you so much for supporting. Have a good day. Stay positive and encourage others.
Love it.
Thank you for listening to Positive Filter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, spreading positivity of movement. Thanks for listening.